Strive and Thrive is a collection of discussions featuring guests from various fields, focused on guiding entrepreneurs in creating businesses that excel in every aspect: people, planet, and profit. Throughout the series, you can join us, Romesh and Mike, as we explore relevant topics with our guests which can help businesses thrive.
Romesh and I met while I was supporting a client transform their business, and I needed finance director support and reached out to him and his team. Since then, we've become good friends who share a passion for business and entrepreneurship. If you like today's discussion, then you want to subscribe to our YouTube and Spotify channels.
Hi everyone, and welcome to our latest episode with Tom Ahmad. As an insolvency practitioner, restructuring advisor, and business owner, Tom has spent nearly 20 years working with entrepreneurs at some of the hardest points in their journey. I've known Tom for years, and I'm really looking forward to today's chat. Tom, welcome to the show.
Hi, Romesh. Good to be here.
Excellent, excellent, good. So, and how are you today? You good?
Yeah. I think I've blinked and it's 2:30. So typical Monday. You know, you're slow to get started, but before you know it, the day's almost over. So, but yeah, no, good, very good, mate.
Excellent, good. So it would be fantastic if we could start today by you giving us a brief summary of your journey today. Then we can get stuck in.
Right. Okay. Well, I suppose at the core of me, I'm a boy that grew up above a shop in southeast London, a family business. So that's been in my blood from the beginning. Did the books when I was young, so got a sense of what accountants do and advisors do. Did an accountancy degree and fell into this sector called insolvency, which is an unusual one, and stuck with it. So that was 99, 2000. And I set up my own practice, well, with my co-founder, Paul, in 2007, after qualifying as an accountant and an insolvency practitioner. And we've been advising businesses in financial difficulty since that time, seeing lots of mistakes and making lots of mistakes ourselves. And our business now also extends to doing debt recovery and credit control for businesses, other insolvency practitioners, lenders, and we have some commercial finance capability too. So all things cash flow.
Really good, Tom. Thanks very much. And this is going to be interesting because I'm interested both in your own journey, but you're going to have really interesting insights for the sort of companies you support that are at times of difficulty in their businesses. So I think there's going to be lots of insights here for entrepreneurs and founders and leaders in organizations. So tell us a bit about what made you, firstly, on your entrepreneurial journey, what made you set up your company and what was the journey for you to get to the point you got to today? What going from accountancy into your own business?
I think there's a few factors, and that's a serendipity of life. I think number one, I'm probably slightly mad and crazy to be an entrepreneur. I think
all three of us.
Yeah, I think we need to recognise that, or certainly to stick it out for this long. I think that's the other thing. There's a longevity that it takes. But I grew up in a family business, so for me, you know, I'd go to the cash and carry. I learned my numbers by getting a marker and writing on cans like 10 pence for a can of beans or what have you, and saw that innovation. So I think that was in me anyway, that environment. Went to university, went to a good university, did accountancy as a qualification, realised that actually what I was studying in a lot of ways didn't bear any resemblance to the day-to-day of being in a little business. That little red book I used to have to complete on a Sunday night with receipts from the till kind of meant business to me. But anyway, stuck with it, did what my dad and mum said, get yourself an education, son. Found myself getting qualified as an accountant and an insolvency practitioner. If I'm being honest with you, that was probably as much about being in an environment where some people use their qualification to lord it over others. And I don't know if you've met people like that on your journey, fellas, but someone that qualifies and they think they're the guru, and truth is they're only for a short period of time. But did that. And then it was my business partner, Paul, who's my study buddy. And we used to work together when I was in the city. I started in the city, then moved to a smaller firm. Over a glass of wine or a beer, he said, "Why are we doing this qualification, Tom?" And I said, "Well, I'm doing it because you told me to do it." You know, that sort of thing as friends. He said, "What about us setting up a business if we start?" And that was I said, "If we pass, we'll talk about it." And we were one of few. I think the pass rates were something like 18% first time, but we both passed. And he held me to it. He said, "Why don't we do it?" So at the time, it was as simple as, well, I thought, well, I'm not going to get an opportunity like this, you know, with a good person that I trust and seen the best and worst of as we studied. So what was it? £10,000 in a bank account we put each. Committed that we wouldn't take a salary or any money out until we could afford it. We bought 2 laptops, a multifunction printer, and back then 2 Blackberries. And we just went on our way. And that was it. That's the start of it. And we had a very rough business plan. We achieved the numbers, but we didn't achieve it in the way that we thought we would. And we've just kept on going.
It's interesting that you've put on you're a co-founder. Is the co-founder bit really important to you in terms of you and Paul and your relationship? Because it sounds like that was central to setting it up, and has that been central to the success of the business?
I think it's a factor. So Paul, how do I reflect on this now? So Paul was my colleague. He was a manager when I landed. He worked at Deloitte, and he moved to the firm that I moved to in the city. We connected like most colleagues do. We became friends. We set up a business, and I would say we lost our friendship. And we worked through that, and we became brothers. And that's the way I see it. I see that journey, I would say, a parallel to a marriage. All the excitement, all the, you know, the euphoria of meeting someone, everything's really nice. But then you get a mortgage, and then you have kids. And then it hits you in the face, and you stick it out, and you make lots of mistakes, and you forgive each other a lot. And we're very different, so that's helped. When I'm strong, you know, I can support him, and vice versa. And over that time, you find a way to become very strong. So we've seen lots of people come and go, but we've been a constant. So yeah,
that's really interesting. That's such a lovely way of putting it as well. So and that's happened over a long period of time, I assume. Your relationship has ebbed and flowed with the business, but now it's a really strong relationship, having gone through the experiences together.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you guys, and have you got business partners, chaps?
One of my businesses, I do, yeah. So I'm co-founder on one of my businesses.
And how long have you been in business with that person, Mike?
It's been funny. So actually only a year, but prior to that, we've been working together for 4 years to set it up. So it's been an accordion experience, right? Busy, not busy, trying to manage what's going on. So it's been an interesting experience.
I think, and as a business owner, things aren't linear. In a lot of jobs, right. You do 6 months, you do a year, you pass your qualification, you get these skills, do that. In business, it is that ups and downs. And I don't know how you see time, but you may have had 4 years of talking about it, but 1 year of doing it. And when you're doing it and you're feeling it, Paul and I walked to the same cash machines when you used to, a month after we started, and we didn't see any money going to that bank account from our job. That is the reality of being in business. And Paul and I sat down after 6 or 7 months when I was close to, I had a little window. I had a mortgage. I bought a house for my brother, avocado bathroom, secondhand furniture back in the day, and he just said, he looked, and we looked at the bank account, and we said, "Oh, I think we can pay ourselves something." And I got that first check, I think it was 6 months in or 5 months. He'll know exactly because Paul remembers this stuff. I think it was £7,000. For that amount of work, right, for that amount of time, when you left good, well-paid jobs. So we've been through that journey together. We've been through wins together and not got too excited. We've been through a lot of losses. So I think what you do is you build a perspective and a camaraderie and trust, real trust. And I think the thing I've learned is time fixes most problems, but also it can really strengthen things if you commit to it for a long period of time. So our relationship's very strong. We're still different.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the power of being business when you're kind of in battle, which I think entrepreneurship is often, in a good way, but it is a battle with your own ideas of what's going to happen, with the world around you, with admin, with energy, with your family that think, what do you mean? It's quite emotional actually, because it's been a long time that we've been together, and we've talked about it more recently. 20 years coming up, we're in our 20th year. It's a long time.
It's such a lovely way of putting about co-founders, and we often talk to co-founders, and some of them have gone wrong, some have worked really well, and it's the importance of a strong co-founder relationship is often truly where the longevity occurs within businesses, because you can support each other on what Romesh nicely calls the roller coaster ride, but you touched on the ebbs and flows of running an entrepreneurial business. Can I dig a little bit deeper on what insolvency means now, and what you're actually doing for some of your clients, and the kind of experiences you've got there?
So we typically work with SME businesses, which is quite a big spread. Some of them, SME goes on for quite a long way, and Romesh will tell from an FD perspective, you can be an SME with some big numbers. But people that are very close to often the creation and the running of their operation, I suppose, is the way I see it. When things go wrong, most businesses have ebbs and flows in there, and it's all around cash flow. Something, you've got to a certain scale. Often everyone's been very successful to a point. So one thing that people don't always reflect on is if you failed in business, you're a failure. No, you've often been a success all the way up the ranks. And then it's afforded you another set of opportunities or another chance at something. And what you're doing all the time is weighing up risk and reward. Without the risk, there's no profit. So there's an educated guess, you can plan. Where we get involved is where something has happened, or a selection of things happen, where a business doesn't know if it can pay the bills, doesn't know if it can keep funding going forward. And that can be anything from stakeholder support to a loss of a client, a bad member of staff, a change in the world or sector. And they've tried everything that they think they can do to solve it. And they usually speak to their accountant, and then they say, or their FD, and they say, look, I think this is quite serious. We need to speak to an insolvency practitioner. And that's where I walk into the room, or other insolvency practitioners do. And we have a set of maybe tools and insights about how we might rescue the situation, how we might restructure, or how we might allow a restart of a business. And our job is to get the best possible outcome in a difficult situation.
Brilliant. That's a really nice high level summary, Tom. Very, very accessible way of describing it. And really what you're doing is you're stepping in to advise businesses really in their worst moments. That's the business themselves and obviously the people involved. And you've described how much entrepreneurship means to people. So for you to get involved at this stage, and I know that you're very much a people person, you're very empathetic, right?
Yeah.
And so it must be quite stressful for you personally and for your team.
I think
as well as the business leadership, right?
Yeah, there's a few things about. I suppose working in insolvency and everything's about people. So and that it maybe going full circle to like your partnership. You're in business partners, but you're also in partnership with your customers. You're in partnership with your investors. You're in partnership with the bank. You're in partnership with your employees. Everyone it's kind of a connection of relationships, and we're actually ultimately quite emotional beings. As much as logic sort of follows through, when things go wrong, basically it means someone's not going to get what they expected or wanted, or maybe lots of people. So you've got to personally, I feel, I am quite an empathetic person. Maybe I shouldn't have been an insolvency practitioner, but like a lot of people, I fell into a path. I'm capable, I'm good. My strength is probably that I'm aware of all those things and I'm quite sensitive to it. I think I've got just a natural strength to be quite what's the term, emotional intelligence. I just empathize, right? That's a strength, but it's a weakness too. And if you can in the most difficult situations, if you can get as many people on your side in solving the problem, you've got the most chance of solving the problem, in my experience. And often solving a problem means letting people accept that they can't solve it in the way they hoped to in the beginning, but this other way is okay. So yeah, I do feel it. But I've got a busy family life, and I try to do things like run, and I try to be mindful of myself and my energy. I fail a lot because I'm a business owner myself. I can't just rely on my employment contract and the help of all the things that should do. Ultimately the buck stops with me and Paul and whoever leads, as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, it is tough, but what's the saying I heard, which was really relevant? Show me a person with character that hasn't had a hard life. And I'd certainly believe in those sorts of the best people I meet have not had it easy, but they've got through it. So it's just part of my journey.
Yeah. Okay. So in these scenarios, then you must see the best and the worst in people. Can you tell us about your experiences there? Because it's emotional, isn't it? When you're an entrepreneur and you've got a business that maybe isn't doing so well, and certainly struggling to the extent that your services might be needed, that's a very personal thing, isn't it? And there's pride involved.
Yeah, I promise you. I mean, you've advised lots of, as an FD, you've advised a lot of founders and creators and investors, and now when things are going really wrong, or when, even at every level, that sort of that flushes out who is a problem solver, who can say sorry, who can get frustrated but kind of get on with it and solve the problem. And it also flushes out people that blame, point the finger, judge. You must have seen that around the boardroom table. You must have seen that with arguing founders, but ultimately, in the end of it all, it's the problem solvers that solve it and move forward. And I have had the privilege of 25 years I've been in insolvency. I was a kid walking into the room as a junior with a partner, an insolvency specialist. But it's amazing that little moments where you see, a founder of a business that took over from the parents, the kids that have taken over from parents, multi-generation business, an example. We're going to make this business really future-proof. We're going to take it to the next level. But actually, they didn't have the hard yards taking it from nothing to where it was. And yes, they might be able to do that. But when things go wrong, it's amazing how the people that really matter walk into the room. Mum and dad, out of retirement, will sit down and go, what's going on? And I think you're built that way. If you're someone that's going to solve problems, it's a real privilege to see it happen. And it's rarer than you think, really, at a high level. Most people, it's quite hard to face up to these problems. What's your thoughts, Romesh? What have you seen and about the best and worst of people around those difficult moments yourself?
Yeah, I mean, one of the thoughts that popped into my head then was, can you turn someone who's not a problem solver into someone who starts thinking in that way? Is it possible? I think from my experience, you can guide and nudge people in that direction if they're open to it. So they don't necessarily need to be a natural problem solver, but they need to be open to new thoughts and ideas. And at a stressful time, people often tend to panic, don't they? They become very, very reactive and reflexive, I suppose.
Defensive, I see.
And defensive. Yeah, absolutely. And I think strength and resilience is really important there. And you kind of touched on it a second ago when you said, you know, some people, when you've done the hard yards of building a business, you have to have built some resilience, because growing a business is not a linear journey, as we discussed, right? And you have to have dealt with many, many peaks and troughs. And therefore, often someone who's been in it maybe a little bit longer can have a little bit more clarity. And obviously there's exceptions to the rules here, but every scenario is different. The mix of people involved in the scenario is also important, I think. So if you've got a team of people working together, that also helps. If you're just on your own, or if it's in a relationship which is, you know, less cohesive, that just puts further strain on the scenario. So in my experience, Tom, it's multifaceted and really depends on lots of factors.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I suppose, I guess, and nothing's hard and fast, but if I can talk about a personal observation that I think is relevant to what I've experienced alongside professionals who set up a business, who could have done well in a career and a job. And again, this is I don't want you to say that this is a rule. This is just an observation on average.
Nice caveat, Tom. I like
caveat, massive caveat before, you know, I get all the hate mail. But I've met a lot of people that said, you know what, when I qualify and when I do this and when I get to this point and once I've done that, then I'll set up a business. And when I've figured it all out, then I'll do it. And the assumption is,
that's me.
Well, I've solved everything, and so I'm going to set up a business, and it's going to be a success. That's one type of individual who has potentially always done well at school, passed exams, ticked all the boxes, got the promotions, put some money behind them, all those things. Also, we know in life that you get used to being successful and always winning and following your annual appraisal plan for the following year and exceeding it, which is linear. Then you meet another type of entrepreneur that started to be an entrepreneur when they were at school, because they couldn't really understand what was going up on the board. They struggled to read, or they might have problems with their attention. We know it now, maybe like ADHD or dyslexia. But somehow found a way to survive school that was completely against them by solving problems, relationships, dealing with failure every day as a child. Then when coming out, I couldn't do my A-levels, just need to get a job. Dad sent me over, or mum sent me over to like a labouring job. And next thing you know, this entrepreneur has made his mistakes and learned to work around a team and solve problems, realised I need a team to fix them. I need to find another way to move around the problem that's in front of me. And they've built that resilience. They've been making mistakes and solving them a lot sooner. And then you add all the years of that, and then they get up to 20 years and suffer a business failure. And my experience on average is that someone that suffers a failure, maybe at the same age, but after all these things, one will just solve it, and they tend to show the best of a person. It's usually the people that I suspect have ADHD, dyslexia, or some sort of limitation that can deal with failure well, because they've been doing it since they were a kid. I'm a good insolvency practitioner, partly because I took appointments. I might be 47, young. I'm a young practitioner, but I set up a business 20 years ago. It's really rare to have someone as a young person set up an insolvency firm and become a liquidator of a company. Did I know what I was really doing? Well, I passed the textbooks. I did all that stuff. But my true skill now is that I ran a business. I've made mistakes. I've solved them. I haven't pointed to a department or somebody else that should have done it for me, or I haven't moved because I could just apply for another job. I've had to solve them myself. So I think it's less about, so going back to your first point, I think everyone can absolutely become someone that can solve problems. I just think it takes time, and you build up to it. And the sooner you put yourself in the mix, and the sooner you start making mistakes, the far faster you'll develop and improve. That's my view on it. It's an experiment. You're not a failure. You're just learning.
I tie that into the whole resilience thing as well, because I think you build up resilience as you move on and face challenges and overcome them, and it kind of makes you stronger, right? Yeah. And Mike, I just wanted to draw you in because you raised your hand and smiled and identified the point there about the kind of first type of entrepreneur.
Yeah, I want to dig in a bit further and a bit broader than what you've said there, Tom. I'm not necessarily sure it's about problem solving, and I'm starting to think, Romesh, a bit beyond resilience almost, because resilience is something that will eventually break if you push it hard enough. In terms of grammar and definition. I think it's about the ability to be really adaptive when you need to be. And to your point, Tom, around people at school, they built the business, they've hustled. It's their ability to adapt. Oh, the business is struggling. I've got to do something different. I have to learn a new skill. I have to go and get some advice because I don't know what I'm doing. It's, for me, that's the bit that I think is where I see the much more adaptable entrepreneurs and the much more adaptable founders. It's not the ones who have a very prescriptive, pre-organized plan, to your point. And then when that plan falls over, which it inevitably will do in the world of business, that they can't work out how to wrestle it free. And they can't work out the fact that it was just a piece of paper with a plan and a direction, and you're now learning of what's right or wrong. And when your original plan is wrong, it doesn't matter. You can adapt to it and find a way forward. And I think there's something more in how humans adapt to these situations, or entrepreneurs who are able to deal with difficult periods, and their ability to adapt, I think, is the more interesting state. Thoughts?
I think you're absolutely right. So we're circling around kind of similar issues. Ultimately, whatever you likely think it's going to look like, it probably won't be the way you do. And my experience, I don't know about you guys, but my experience in business is the first lesson is, it is very much, you can have a game plan, but what's it? If you get punched in the face, it goes out the window, right? And so, and it does. But I use these strong terms because it does feel that way when it's your business. And this isn't. You can't just resign from it. You're a director of a company. You've. And it isn't, and the whole system at the minute feels a little bit, for a lot of people, not very friendly to business and entrepreneurship. I don't know if we fall into, not politically, but the kind of the common terms, working people. But I knew that when I don't know about you guys, but when I had to get a mortgage, I needed 3 years of accounts, and I needed 3 years of tax returns, 3 years of success. Most businesses fail in the first 3 years, right? And then they go through a cycle. But I could have hired somebody with no track record experience, and they could have given 4 months or 5 months of pay slips, and they can get a mortgage. I understand the reasons for it, but it's tough. So that though I really feel those are courageous enough to do it, and maybe a bit silly to do it, frankly. If they keep going and they get through it and they just survive, they don't have to be multimillionaires. If they can build a good business that provides a good service, helps a community, employs people, gives them a good way of life, is like massive. And I really commend those individuals. But it ain't easy, and be under no illusions.
And that kind of example you just said, that's what drives our economy, right? It's businesses like that are supremely important to our success as a nation, I think. So I think we all share this passion, don't we, about helping this kind of business succeed. And I totally agree with you, Tom. Small and medium-sized businesses need more help, support, more understanding. I think it's more understanding of what the experience is like. You're taking risks, you're doing stuff that not everyone can do. You need to be strong. We've talked about that. You need to be adaptable. You need to be open as well, to understand, gosh, and humble. You've got to have all of these things to just take things forwards. And and make things work, and you're constantly fighting a battle, Tom, to use your words. So it's incredibly hard, and that's why we celebrate entrepreneurship and being it's a great thing.
But at the same time, it's quite addictive, and I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I know that when you do face a problem and it feels insurmountable and you overcome it a bit, you go, oh, I can do this, and yeah, I can fix that, and I've found a new way of approaching something, and I've got this new opportunity as a result, because around every corner and around at the other side of every crisis is massive opportunity.
Yeah.
And my business has evolved and developed from this little 2 guys to a first office to now a distributed team, and every time I move forward, it's definitely 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but I'm moving forward on average. And it's really important to see the world that way, and I just think it's such a powerful thing, and I could sit with any entrepreneur that is on that journey and spend a good evening over a beer talking war stories, but probably smiling at the end of it, because they're in the game.
I see that word, and a lot of people, when I started, a mentor said to me, don't call it a problem, call it an opportunity. And really simple narrative change. And I think it's different from the problem solving word we used earlier, but this is going, look, things are really tough. What do we do? What's the opportunity that we can spin off this? And have you got the energy to go again, to change direction? If you get a rejection, what do you do about it? Go again. What does that create? More headspace for doing something else. It's about seeing things as opportunities, because I think this is such an important narrative right now in the economy. Since in the last year, Romesh and I have talked to so many entrepreneurs, either face to face or on here, and nearly all of them have had tough times in the last 18, 24 months at various points. And I think it's surprising how many. And I think, what do you have a view on seeing this market from your side, Tom? Do you see more increase in the number of insolvencies, more distressed businesses, more problems in there at the moment?
Yeah, I think there is. I mean, I think a healthy economy, I think the first thing is a healthy economy has a level of failure.
Okay.
Honestly, if everyone who set up in business succeeded, we would be in some sort of state-run scenario. These are ideas.
It's healthy,
and I think it's healthy. I think how you deal with those failures and how you manage them is also part of being healthy. So, for example, if you guys have got competition in your area, and if they're really poorly run businesses, not delivering a good service, treating their customers poorly, pricing poorly, yet they were allowed to carry on because they didn't pay their taxes, and they were allowed to just keep drifting because the government supported them and everyone was really understanding. Well, really, that's locking up. One, it's locking up space in the economy. It's a garden. For me, I think the economy is a garden, and if you remove a bad plant, you allow space for the others to thrive, and all you're doing is recycling assets and people, even in a business failure. So my job is to recycle the best bits back into the economy. That's how I see it. I have all the legalities and processes, but if your employer was eventually not going to be able to pay you and not provide you the future that you want as a member of staff, this is the end. I know it's time. We'll manage it as best we can, but you can move forward to another place. And that might be hard for some people to do. If you're an investor and this business, the directors were right to say, look, let's call time on what we're doing because you're throwing good money after bad. That money doesn't disappear. It will be placed into a business, maybe a restarting business or a successor business from this that has a prospect of success. So, but what I think we're seeing is a lot more businesses went through a number of challenging moments. COVID, well, all the ones that were fragile around COVID have gone now. There were fewer failures around COVID, but the government were frankly up paying money to businesses, whatever they were, right? And we know there's abuse, and we know that happened. But that's past. The businesses that got to this point, a lot of them were carrying that weight post-COVID, paying their debts back. They've seen an increased tax burden. They've had an increased cost of members of staff. I was out with a couple of professionals, accountants, a solicitor, and even ourselves. if you look at our increased cost of employing people, ultimately that means there's less money to recruit. That isn't available to recruit another junior. We've got, and Mike, this is probably all around your space, the development of AI and kind of a new dawn coming. So people are really reluctant to recruit when they think they can get efficiency savings through this new technology that hasn't yet really landed. And even at the end, even if you're successful in business, one of the things we're seeing is that the taxes have gone up on exit, and the chances of getting to the point where you can get some incentive to build a business, they're actually being eroded. So there's a real feeling that this is hard, and this is a not the best environment. But at the end of the day, like, that's just the reality, right? This will change in 5 years and 10 years. We go through cycles, but what we have to do is just adapt to it. And a lot of business
keep going, right? Keep going.
Keep going as an entrepreneur or as a business owner. Don't necessarily keep going with the same shop or the business or the location. The thing that we see a lot of is that people sign up for commitments based on a set of facts they thought would happen. Now, does today feel like what we imagined when we got out of COVID we would be feeling like now? Probably not. Now, there's been a whole shift in how the world's operating in a lot of ways. And if you were a person that maybe just signed up to a number of leases on key locations in city hubs for workers to go in, for example, for a chain of coffee shops that needed labour, and you found that it's harder to have labour, it's more expensive, and now people are only in for 2 or 3 days a week in those locations, not 5 days a week, but you've got a 15-year lease that was both. Whose fault is that? There's no one's fault. It's just not going to work, is it? So we face those. That's the reality. So we need a mechanism.
I see people working more in shorter time frames now as well at the moment because of the sorts of things you're talking about, because in 12 months things are changing really fast. So I'm seeing organizations work in 3 to 6 month chunks, which means you're really adaptable to what we've talked about earlier. But to Romesh's point, if you're taking a real financial lens, you're not taking a long-term sort of investment look at your business. So it's that kind of keep going short term, keep adapting what we're recommending, but at the same time, there's got to be some sort of longevity to what you're trying to achieve as a business.
I mean, how far ahead are you guys looking in your businesses? Realistically,
for me, it's hard to go beyond 6 months. It's truth. One business I'm looking out well into the end of next year. Another one, 3 to 6 months is what I'm really working out at, because clients change so fast right now, and they'll be really keen, and then they'll suddenly disappear, and then they'll pop back up.
And Romesh, what's your time scale?
Yeah, so I kind of have my objectives for the year, if you like, but I tend to then break that down into kind of 3-month sprints, if you like, because there is literally so much that's changing, isn't there? Functionality because of AI. Gosh, I mean, there's stuff that you can do with AI now that you couldn't have dreamt of doing, like even as recently as 6 months ago, I think. Certainly in my experience. So I think it's just looking and adapting to your point, watching, observing, trying to hit your objectives, but then reassessing those objectives and seeing if they're still relevant, because it is very, very dynamic. And you, Tom, what's your horizon for planning?
So I think we have a year's plan. I think my sense of, I feel like in the next, I can probably see up to 2.5 to 3 years ahead. I feel like most of the rules of today will still apply for the next 2 to 3 years in my head. There will be, new technologies emerge and there'll be new things, but broadly speaking, the rules of engagement in professional service, I think. However, I think, if you aren't ready to adapt to change at any given moment, you kind of erode there's a risk all the time. So I'm working on a couple of years really with a 3-year view, but I'm constantly evaluating it. What what's interesting about our business model is that, we went for a bring work to people model, and that's quite rare in my industry. There's a lot of flexible working, but there's not anybody that's kind of solely moving to bringing work into people. And so that's been a strategic shift. It's been a very challenging one, complex for the most part. It's opened up opportunities for me to recruit wherever in the country I need to, so I can get talent, but I have to select the right kind of individual that's both high performing, but also, does well in a flexible environment. And I've had to reorientate our business. The truth is, for the most part, most of the senior team that I used to have a few years ago aren't here now because it wasn't right for them. But what I have got is I've got real flexibility and resilience with some of my team that would have left me long ago that are moving with our business, and it suits them. So, but all of these things, I think what I'm learning is when you're being flexible, it's quite hard to make real commitments sometimes to things.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and that problems that I was able to weather maybe in the past because I had made a long-term commitment to something, I won't have because I've never signed up for it. And people, I'm seeing a reluctance to take people on to train them for long-term because are they going to stay? How long are they going to be with us? Well, actually,
are their roles going to still be the same in a couple of years' time as well?
I would say from my team, I think the way I'm framing it, and maybe I'm a bit of an optimist, okay? Maybe I'm a bit of an optimist, but I don't carry excess weight. That's the first thing. And there's a lot of firms in our world that does. One of our challenges in the past is getting talents. We've not been flush with it. Small professional services firms, there's been to get high quality talent has always been a challenge. There's been a lot of sort of M&A, a lot of firms being acquired by private equity, and they've kind of got together to get these big old machines, but I don't know how well integrated they're dealing with those challenges, and I think they probably have excess weight in them. We haven't, so I think that's our advantage. What I'd like, and I think we've been selecting for people that are good with people. Our recruitment process has done that, and my hope is, and I've been doing a lot with my, I've invested in a sort of a full-time HR head of people earlier in the curve for culture and well-being, and AI and technology is like firmly on the agenda. Just socializing it in a non-fearful way. But I almost feel like that would enable my teams to get out of the compliance, which has kind of plagued our industry and a lot of industries in professional services. Another box to tick, another letter, to be more human, to engage more with people. So the analogy. We've got lots of police doing paperwork, but they're not on the beat. That sort of analogy in our industry, I feel the same personally. I think it's a conversation that's happened all the time. We've got a mission creep with more checks, more checklists, more tick box, when actually what we need is more empathy, more understanding, more communication, the right type of communication, not over communication. And I hope that will be that's how I see my pivot and what I'm preparing for.
I think it creates opportunities for you, Tom, because what I see as a trend right now in AI, and I actually am working in policing to try and help them get back on the front line by giving them AI technologies to reduce the amount of admin they're doing. Genuinely working on that right now. But what we're seeing is you want police officers on the front line. You want yourselves working with these challenge companies and helping them, not dealing with the paperwork. And it's pulling out those experts who are able to adapt and give advice. There's going to be roles for them. Let's make them more efficient. And the other project I'm working on is supporting sales teams. Stop sales teams being in their organization doing paperwork and proposals and bids. Get them out talking to customers.
Yes.
And that's where this world is going to adapt more quickly. So organizations like yourself who've got humble, experienced users, how can you double down their efficiency? How can we make them really good at what they're doing and reduce the amount of administrative work that they're doing, because you can get an AI to do a job for someone that generally that person gets bored with normally, and a human is rubbish at it because it's boring. Get a computer to do it and get the human to do the bit they're really good at, interacting with other humans.
Mike, you're 100% right. There's nothing human about copying and pasting into a spreadsheet. Okay.
Correct.
But there is something human about going, I know Bob and Sue, who run that cafe, will be really worried about this.
Correct.
I found out something. I'm going to give them a call.
And the more you do of that, the more successful you'll be, right? The more you help those individuals, the more you will be successful.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that is certain, just keep the client at the heart of it. Keep the product at the heart of it. Your team and your team and yourself and everyone around you and all the subscriptions and all the taxes only get solved if you solve the problem for your clients. And I think sometimes we get so insular and focused on what about my job and what about this and what about that. And I just think, well, just focus on the client. Give them some care.
The answer's there, right? The
answer's in that, isn't it? All the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's my business owner's hat on, not my IP, but it's the same principle, really.
Yeah. Well, what I love about this is that you're both talking about leaning into our humanity, doubling down on us as humans, as people, with empathy, with understanding, with care, Tom, to use your words. And that's something that AI can't ever do, right? So yeah, let's, like you say, let's let AI do the stuff that we don't like doing, and hone and kind of sharpen our skills to provide excellent services with that human touch, understanding that's really going to be appreciated. And I totally agree. I think it's businesses that adopt that approach, something that we all support. I think that will thrive, in the next phase of technological development.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question, Tom? You were taking it down a really interesting route, so I left it. But I want to go back to one thing you said earlier, and you talked about how it's really important. You used your garden analogy, and you said how it's really important that businesses fail. I thought that was a lovely analogy and comment, and I sort of was thinking about it. And do you think there's a bit of a taboo about business failure? And do you think there needs to be a slight reframing of it? And linked to that, do you think there's graceful failure for businesses, and really thinking about good failure rather than bad, so that the economy can keep booming and other businesses can survive? What's your perspective on that?
There's absolutely a taboo with failure. I think there's a taboo with mental health associated with business owners. I think there's a taboo with being honest about the difficulties in business and talking about it, because when you're starting out in business, you go to your networking events, or you launch a new product, and it's all fanfare. And I think there's a lot of gurus out there that are like incredibly wealthy, had these serendipitous moments and suddenly made a load of money. But for the most part, that isn't true. Just like there aren't many 21-year-olds that I know that have a Ferrari, but on YouTube there's loads of them, right? So, but I think that's, and I straddle a period before that. So I think there's a lot that we need to there needs to be empathy. We need to lose the assumption, I feel, that failure is the fault of the directors and owners. There's lots of contributing factors, and it's complicated. There are checks and balances in the insolvency process, that reviews who were directors and what they did, and if they did anything that was really, really wrong. In my experience, most directors, if they've done something wrong, they've done it inadvertently, and they try and solve it. We work with them to do so. There's genuinely good reasons, or they didn't get advice at the time from somebody. A business owner is only as good as their advisors at the time. But actually, if they always listen to their advisors, they wouldn't have a business anyway, because most of their advisors are employed people in jobs that haven't taken those sorts of risks themselves, right? And we know that kind of irony,
That's a good paradox. Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head with that. Yeah.
Everyone, and look, again, you got to be careful about stereotypes, but typically I know that in a bank, there'll be someone that sells you finance, or there's emerging lenders selling you finance. When things go wrong, it'll go to another department, and that other department wouldn't be the sorts of people that would have given that business a chance in the first place. They're kind of more like your compliancy type people. We shouldn't have done this in the first place. We need to pull things back. But at the moment of failure and the moment of risk for a business, that's when you need your lenders and investors and your staff and everyone to lean in and help. And the moment that they pull away because they don't want to be associated with failure, they can't cope with the fact that things aren't going right, you kind of exacerbate the problem. So I do feel we need to do that. I do see some hurdles for business owners who've been through failure. I don't know, getting insurance for the next company, getting money in the future. But there are genuine reasons for failure, right?
And so there's often things that are completely outside of your control. And you've talked about serendipity, haven't you? I think a really good analogy is the politician who, isn't a very good politician, doesn't lead their country or whatever in a particularly, good way, yet they've benefited from a great economy because of circumstances completely out of their control or influence, and they bask in the glory of it. And you can get vice versa, right? There are so many factors at play. So that's a really key point. You shouldn't punish individuals for. We should be encouraging risk, measured risk, and we all want businesses to succeed, good businesses, right? But we need to have a tolerance and acceptance and make sure that people understand that it's okay. It's okay to fail.
Are you guys dads? Have you got kids?
Yeah, I am. Two boys.
Not me.
Well, I've got kids, right? And what I learned is if I'm too firm on them, this is me being, if I'm a Victorian dad, what do you think the chances are they'll come forward earlier when there's a problem? When they could do with help? If the penalty for failure is too great, people are likely to avoid dealing with it. They're likely to not get help earlier, and it all comes down to shame and embarrassment. If, however, there is a safe space and a culture that says, look, we know things are going wrong. These are things that these are some steps you can take. And actually, there's a kind of a wider community that accepts it around all stakeholders, including HMRC, who are, in my experience, are questionable in terms of their service they give businesses and how they operate and how they engage and their judgment of business. I think we'd have a greater ability, as Mike said, to fail well. I think you can fail well, but I think that fear means people are. How many men find a lump and just don't go to the doctor? We know that kind of analogy, don't we? And then by the time they go, it's spread and it's gone too late. Our world is very similar.
It's a stigma, isn't it? It's a stigma, and it's taking that away and saying, "Hey, that's okay,"
And we know other economies. We can have a judgment about it, but we know other economies are more accepting of risk and failure, and good and bad. But I think we may have gone too far. My feel about it.
What would be your recommendation to a founder or an entrepreneur or business owner who's worried, right? Not necessarily in a difficult situation, but who's worried? What would be your recommendations to that owner of that business?
This is more about me as a business owner probably giving this advice. Bit like the whole point about being in business is hard, right? We've all accepted that. It's courageous, it's brilliant. You're going to have to take some of that courage that you did at the beginning when things go, and all those things, to have the courage to just find some support from your accountant, your financial advisor, speak to an insolvency practitioner, a trusted one. Hopefully you've got a good one, right? And hopefully we all know there's a mixed bag of advisors out there. That's part of the serendipity. If you've got a good advisor or you've survived, that's great. But just go and speak to someone confidentially. knowledge is power, and often what you imagine something will be is far worse than what it actually is. And in my experience, when I sit down with a director and I go, look, we can do this, we can't do that, this is a plan, there's a sense of relief, there's sadness and disappointment, there is now a plan to move forward, and there's an understanding that there's support alongside you. Okay, and if you tell an entrepreneur also, or a business owner, this is where you're going to get support, but this is where you're not, if that's my experience, well, most of them have already gone so far where something that they thought was going to be there isn't, and they've survived that. It's just another factor. There is no expectation for a lot of business owners for, you know, a handout, a payout, a compensation claim, a final salary pension. There's none of that, you know. So my experience is speak up to someone confidentially and get some help. You might find out it's not as bad, and the sooner you do, often the more options you have to go down those paths.
That was just what I was going to add there, Tom. I think sometimes we speak to potential clients and it's really too late for us to help them. You know, so I'm speaking as a finance director now, you know, where, you know, one of our jobs is to try and help businesses avoid the situations that you inherit, right? You know, but sometimes it's just too late. So I think if you're worried, to Tom's point, and I totally would echo this, you know, speak to someone sooner rather than later. And, you know, we help businesses, for example, manage their cash flows, right? Mission critical if you're struggling. And it's so much better to understand that, hey, we are going to have a major cash flow problem in 3 or 4 months' time, than to understand or realize that a week or two before, right? Because you've got time to address the problem. Give yourself that time. So you know, be proactive, I think. And, you know, in a perfect world, you've set up systems, processes, and, you know, you've got a business model, which means the business doesn't tend towards that outcome. But as we've discussed, there's lots of things you don't control. So these things happen, but adapt and react in the right way.
Sorry, Mike.
I was just going to say, I just want to add on. I think I totally agree with what you're both saying, but I think Tom talked about something else as well on top, is your own mental health. Find that support for your own personal emotional experience as well. It might be the same person, might not be. But whatever it is, cover those two bases, get some help on the financial and business side, but also get the personal development help, because that's either of those two fall and the whole thing will fall, I'm guessing.
It's true. I always say, you know, at the end of the day, if you don't look after yourself, nothing else works, does it? You know, whether it's business, whether it's family, whatever it is, look after yourself first. That's mission critical.
The thing that people don't see is they see the failure, but they don't see the 6 or 8 months running up to it, where quietly there's some suffering. A business owner will know something's not quite right. They will be trying everything, or, you know, the senior team, and they'll be solving and hoping something will. They'll be hoping they get the next contract. They will work through their numbers and cash flows, and actually, do you know what? That's normal, right? Most businesses and the other thing that I would like to say is most people that are in business at some stage in their cycle will have really tough times. That's kind of where you start. That's why, you know, a business that maybe has one person can operate with a handwritten notebook and a diary, but a business of 5 people need a shared calendar. It usually comes because you've scaled a little bit, but you've not scaled your systems or process. And when do you do that? Very few people can or will or can see the need for an investment until it becomes a bit too late, and you kind of catch it back. You are not your business. You are you, and your business is your business. But you will continue to live and be an entrepreneur and be whatever you want to be. Maybe you get a job, maybe you come back into it. Maybe we can get your business to survive. but try in those moments to kind of create a distinction, look after yourself, look after your business, and speak up. And it will be okay in the end. Honestly, that's my experience.
That's a great thought to start wrapping up a wonderful conversation, Tom. Everything will be all right in the end. That's that. Yeah, I think so. Thank you so much, Tom. That's it's been a discussion packed full of insights and really, really good thoughts. Mike, what are your takeaways from this chat?
I've got many, so I'm just going to thank Tom really, and just for giving me lots and lots of things to think about. You've built on my own curiosity. You've given me insights on your sector, on challenges of businesses, on mental health, and some lovely analogies like your gardening analogy. So absolute pleasure to talk to you, Tom, and thanks for your time.
Oh, and guys, thank you for inviting me on. This is really cool, and I've enjoyed the conversation. We're all trying to figure it out together, and I've become a bit wiser from speaking to you two. So thank you for today.
Wow, first ever.
Thanks, brilliant. Tom. Yeah, well, I'm really glad you enjoyed the chat, Tom, and I knew you'd be a great person to have on the show. And the gardening analogy, spot on. Loved it.
Cheers.
As well as many other insights. So thank you everyone very, very much for listening or watching today. We are really grateful for Tom for joining us, and to everyone for all of your support. We hope you like what you're hearing. Do get in touch and give us feedback. We want to get better. And if you'd like to support us, tell a friend who's interested in business about our podcast. And we really hope you can join us next time. See you next time. Thank you for listening to Strive and Thrive.